Welcome, everyone. I hope everyone is well today, and thank you so much for joining me today for this webcast where we will be exploring effective managers and the Effective Managers Survey. We have everyone on mute today. The reason for that is that we have experienced feedback from the system if everyone's microphones are on. So if you have any questions or if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please ask a question using the question box on the side of your screen. That will pop up on my screen, and then we'll be able to take care of that. We have up to 30 minutes for our presentation today, so I want to get started right on time. There's a lot of material to cover, and I do want to honor that commitment of 30 minutes. If we have time left before the 30 minutes, I would be absolutely happy to answer some questions or perhaps engage in some discussion as well. So please do ask any questions as we're going along. I won't stop during the presentation to answer them, but I would be very happy to come back to them at the end. And if I have more questions than we have time, I will get back to you by email so that you will have that. So everyone should now see the screen which shows the title for today's webinar. And I will now move forward into our first screen where we're talking about today's session. We have three parts for the material that we want to cover today. The first part is to talk about the role and effectiveness of managers in today's workplace, because that's what this really is all about. What is happening with managers? How can we help them to be as effective as possible in organizations? The second is what does the research tell us? There has been some research in this areas, and Effective Managers has just completed some significant research in that area. So I'd like to impart that to you. And then the third part is to talk about the Effective Managers Survey approach. What does that provide to organizations, and how does it help CEOs and heads of organizations to help their managers to be more effective? So the first part then, the role and effectiveness of managers in today's workplace. So I found in terms of my experience as a manager for a couple of decades and in my experience as a management consultant that managers very often find themselves in untenable situations in organizations. As time has gone on, they're being asked to produce more. Often they're asked to produce more with less. They're pulled in many different directions by many different individuals in the organization. In many cases, even the priorities for their work aren't clear for managers. Resources often are not adequate, and perhaps even worse, conflict in the workplace can be high. And the thing is that this really does matter. This is research that was done by Lee Branham in a book he published, The 7 Hidden Reasons Employees Leave. 70% of managers leave a job for reasons related to factors that are directly controllable by their managers. And if you think about it, the manager is the most important relationship that one has in an organization, because that manager is the individual that delegates the work, provides the resources, gives the feedback, recommends compensation, and so on. So it's a critically important relationship. The second is from Gallup organization, which has literally millions of records of managers from the work that they've been doing over a very extensive period of time. And they've found that work groups that are ineffectively managed are 50% less productive and 44% less profitable. So the effectiveness of a manager can actually impact on the bottom line. There's another piece of research that's been out there for over 20 years, and this was first published by James Heskett in 1994 in Harvard Business Review, and he's a professor and still is at Harvard Business School. And his premise was that there's a very direct link between employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, and the revenue growth and profitability of companies. So this article is called Putting the Profit Chain to Work. If anybody's interested in that, I have a PDF of that I'd be happy to send along. So in simple terms then, well, that first graph showed you all of the different elements. If we think about the service profit chain, employee satisfaction drives customer satisfaction, and then that customer satisfaction will increase the value of the customer over the lifetime of the customer, which leads to revenue and profit for the company. What's often not mentioned, and which you saw in the more detailed model in the previous slide, is that the organizational leadership drives the employee satisfaction. So there are many factors that drive the first step of this service profit chain. And the manager is critical to that because it's the manager that has the biggest impact on the employees of the organization. Since the publication of that article in 1994, there's been a huge amount of additional study because as it was groundbreaking at that time, it's been reinforced by many other organizations over time. I've pulled 3 out of the literature. Just a web search on service profit chain can bring out a huge amount of information. I like Gallup's work because they've focused so much on asking managers and actually measuring the situation of managers in organizations, and they show the kinds of numbers that you see here. Customer loyalty is driven up 56%, productivity 50%, employee retention 50%, and so on. Watson Wyatt, who also works very thoroughly in employment systems and managerial systems, second largest increase in shareholder value. And then a 5% increase in customer loyalty can result in an increase of profits from 25 to 85%. So there's absolutely something here. It's borne out in research, and it reinforces the importance of managers. So if employee satisfaction is so important, what is it that we do as an organization to understand where we sit with that? The first is that there's been a real advancement in the thinking, and since Heskett published his work, in general, the human resources industry has moved from employee satisfaction to employee engagement, and I think that's a great move. So it's not only is the employee satisfied with the work, it's also how engaged are the employees with their job, and how much do they want to do well in terms of doing their work. So the question, though, still, whether we're talking about employee satisfaction or employee engagement, is why don't they make a difference? In many organizations that I've consulted with, the employee satisfaction surveys are carried out year after year. The results are similar. Initiatives are taken to try to turn the results around, and yet the measurements still come in relatively the same. And the premise that I'm putting forward to you today is that the measurement starts at the wrong point, and what we're really measuring when we're looking at employee satisfaction and employee engagement we're looking at the symptoms. And if you remember back to the service profit chain, employee satisfaction starts that profit chain, but it's driven by leadership and managerial behavior. So the point that I'm making is that the measurement really needs to start with and focus in on the managers. Now, I'm not saying, and I want to stress, I'm not saying that the information that we get from employee engagement surveys isn't good information. It is good information. The suggestion I'm making, though, is that there is another layer that needs to be attended to. So I have a couple of examples I'd like to give you that to illustrate that. So the first example is what is an example of a symptom that is typically, this is my first question. What is an example of a symptom that's typically identified? Poor communication. In almost every employee engagement or employee satisfaction survey results that I've seen, poor communication comes up. And if you think, though, about what do employees mean by poor communication? In some cases, it may mean that someone was working on a project and they weren't aware of of a decision that was made higher in the organization that impacted on their work. So they were feeling that they didn't receive the right communication. So these examples abound in organizations where employees don't have the right information at the right time. So if you're working from the symptomatic level, the response that will tend to happen is that an organization will provide an initiative around communication. So they might publish a newsletter, or the CEO might start a program of more town hall meetings, or there might be more walking around. So the intent then is to try to improve communication, when in fact what's happening is that managers are not being clear in terms of the work that they're delegating to their direct accounts, direct reports, and they're not being clear in terms of providing the right context and the right information that direct report is going to need to do the work that they have. So there's actually a breakdown in the accountability and authority framework of the organization so that information is not moving down the organization in the right way. So people do need to be aware of work in other parts of the organization. They do need to be made aware of decisions that were taken higher in the organization, but it has to be provided in a way that is consistent with the work that has been delegated and provided in a way that helps people understand how it will impact on the work that they need to do. A second example that's typically identified is silos in organizations. And it's exactly the same kind of a situation here. Employees will talk about silos. They're not going to talk about a lack of a clear accountability and authority framework for the way work moves across the organization. So unless there's clarity, again, in delegation down the various departments in the organization, what will happen is that people will tend to stop relying on colleagues that they should be able to depend on to be able to do their work, and instead say, well, I'll just do it myself. It's going to be a lot easier. So as a result, over time, rather than building and reinforcing that very important team element of work going across the organization, people start hunkering down, doing work on their own, and they report that, well, this organization is full of silos. So both of these are examples of symptomatic levels of information that can come forward. So that was the setup. That was the information that I wanted to give you in terms of the role of and effectiveness of managers and some of the work that is being done in that area. And would like now to move on to what the research tells us. So the bottom line premise and the findings that I will be talking to you about reinforces that managers really are not able to focus on their value-added work. So this is work that only they, with their capability in their positions, can do. So all managers are working, and I'm not implying in any sense that managers don't work hard. In fact, in my experience, most managers work very, very hard. But the question is, how much can they focus on their value-added work? So the work that only they can do, that they would need to apply their capability for success, and that can only be done in their position. So part of this is the management work of managing others, but part of this is also their direct output work in terms of the deliverables that they're accountable for within their own organization. So in terms of the research that we partnered with the Telfer School of Management, the results were actually quite astounding. Managers spend 20% of their time doing things that they weren't hired to do. So this is, they're reporting that 20% of the time that they spend is on stuff that really isn't part of their job. And another 26% of their time is spent on support work that could be delegated to a qualified support staff. So this is completely consistent with other writings that I've read in this area, but this is the first time that I've been able to find in the management sciences literature that there's a robust research study that actually identified that. So if you think about it, that's over 2 days a week. It's like starting your work week on Wednesday after the morning coffee break. So there is some really significant opportunity for improvement here. And what's the main driver of management effectiveness? I can say it in one word, it's accountability. So one of the highest correlating measurements that we found in the survey is between accountability and the effectiveness of the manager. So the score of accountability are shown there, but the correlation is 0.74. So in social sciences work, that's an incredibly high correlation. A correlation of 0 means there's no correlation, and a correlation of 1 means there's a perfect correlation. So 0.74 is a very high correlation between accountability and between the effectiveness of the manager. So that begs the question, what is accountability? And actually I was very surprised in the reading that I did leading up to the research to find that there is no standard definition for accountability in management sciences, and that's just totally not acceptable. How do you advance a profession? And I believe management is a profession. How do you advance a profession if you don't have common terminology? I mean, chefs have common terminology, engineers have common terminology, doctors have common terminology, so managers need to have that that as well. So the working definition that we have and that we're working with is that accountability is an obligation for which one can be held to account for one's results and one's actions by a specified other. So there are three aspects to this. The first one is there's an obligation. The second is that there's an accountability for results and actions. So just getting there isn't enough. It's how you get there. And the third is the concept of a specified other, that accountability is not internal. Accountability is driven by the fact that one must report to an external other. As an aside, an internally held belief would be a responsibility. So I might hold myself responsible for something, but I am accountable to another for output. And the breakthrough finding here, and this is the key point of the whole presentation today, the breakthrough finding is that accountability has two different dimensions, and this hasn't been well understood up until now. The first is that there's a dimension called clarity of accountability. So how clear am I about those things for which I am accountable, for those things which I can be called to account? And the second dimension is felt accountability. So how obligated do I feel? How much do I carry that accountability? And both of those are directly correlated to manager effectiveness, and both of them have to be understood because it makes a difference. Felt accountability has a mean of 8.7. So this research was done on a 10-point Likert scale. So people agreed or disagreed with statements on a scale from 1 to 10. So the highest possible score was 10, the lowest possible score was 1. So the neat thing about that is you can correlate it kind of to a report card. So felt accountability scored an A+, if you're thinking about a report card. That's pretty good. But the clarity of accountability dimension, 7.1, scores at the B-. So managers feel accountable for the work that they need to do, but they're not clear about the accountability that they have. So if you think about a B-, that might not be bad in high school, but we owe it to our managers to be much better than this. That means 30% of managers are not clear about the accountability, and a larger proportion of them are not completely clear. And the result and the importance of this is that clarity of accountability will lead to clarity of action. So if I as a manager am clear about my accountability, I am then able to delegate work clearly. So work will flow down the organization in a clear way, and everyone will understand their accountability and how it relates back to their manager's work, to the manager's work, and all the way back to the strategic plan of the organization. And it also adds to clarity of interaction, because if everyone in the organization is clear about their accountabilities and how their work relates to others, then how work flows across the organization can be greatly improved. So in fact, this clarity of accountability comes all the way back to the two examples that I gave you that are symptomatic, one of them being communications and the other one being silos. So there's a strong correlation between felt accountability and clarity of accountability. And the interesting thing is, if you think about it, whether or not clear accountabilities are set, managers are going to take on or feel accountability. The research is very clear in that respect. So then the question isn't whether managers will feel accountable for something. We know they will. People do want to do well. The question is whether or not they will feel accountable for doing the right work. So will they be accountable for the right things? I'd like to move now to some of the other measures in the research, and I do have webinars that focus in on this specifically, so this is just a high-level taste of some of the other areas. So one area of great interest is manager capability. The point here being if I don't feel that my manager is capable of managing me, then I'm less likely to be effective. We have an A there. That's not bad, but again, 20% of managers are in a situation where they don't think that their manager is capable. Organizational learning. Many think of this in organizations as a nice to have. This is how well the organization learns, how well the organization shares information, how well the organization accepts those challenging the status quo or taking risk and so on. But it's not a nice to have. Organizations are scoring C-, and we have high correlations between organizational learning and effectiveness of managers. Workflow. This was a very simple measure. We asked managers how well they perceived work flowing across their organizations. This was one of the lowest scoring measures with the D. So on the whole, managers do not feel that work flows smoothly across their organizations. No wonder they feel that there are silos. And this is directly related to clarity of delegation as it applies to work that flows across the organization. We also asked about corporate support systems. If you think about systems like human resources, financial services, information technology, so at the highest level, the corporate functions, if you will, and then there are other business systems below that, managers almost universally did not feel that they were receiving support from those areas. So somehow over time we've let our organizational support systems fail our managers. They're more involved in terms of providing support up the organization. So finance, for instance, might be involved in the strategic planning and the board reports and supporting the CEO and the work of the CFO and so on. And from the perspective of the manager, finance is more of a burden upon them than it is a service to them in terms of them helping them do their work. So this has to be turned around somehow if we want our managers to be effective. And then finally, role conflict. We were interested to find out how conflicted managers feel within their organizations, and this came in at a D-. So this is a score where it shows that half of managers, roughly, are in situations where they're in conflict every day, and this relates directly back to clarity. Employees don't go into work, managers don't go into work wanting to pick a fight with a colleague in another part of the organization or a peer within their own department even. There's confusion about respective accountabilities, and as a result that generates in conflict. Work that I was expecting today so that I can do my work isn't going to be arriving until tomorrow. So where did it go off the rails that we had this miscommunication or this different delegation of accountability down the different streams in the organization so that work doesn't come together? So that brings us to the final section, which is the Effective Managers Survey. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview in terms of what the components of the survey are. So the starting point was how does a CEO know, and I would say a CEO or the head of human resources, know how to have the most significant impact on manager effectiveness? So one way is through assessment, and we have developed the Manager Effectiveness Survey tool to help managers understand how that can work. Traditional employee surveys require all employees to participate. With the survey, the CEO can get the results with an investment of 20 to 30 minutes of each manager's time. So it's not as intrusive into the organization as an employee engagement survey might be. It gives different information, certainly, and I'm not saying that it would replace an employee engagement survey, but it can provide specialized information that can help the CEO. And the survey assesses effectiveness, so how effective are managers in the organization, how do we rate against the benchmark, but also how do we relate on accountability and on the 6 other related factors that I gave you an overview of. For the development of the survey, we partnered with the University of Ottawa. We very much wanted to ensure that the research was robust and that it would stand up to a peer review. Most research by private sector companies is carried out for good purposes, but often isn't, sort of doesn't stand the test of robustness, of validity and repeatability. So we wanted to have the University of Ottawa involved in that to do that. The other thing that I think is really important to bear in mind is that if I'm the CEO, if I'm the head of HR and I'm going to invest resources in a survey and ultimately invest resources in doing something with the information that I receive, I want to be sure that there is valid research behind the tool and that there's a grounded approach. It has to be more than somebody's good idea about what could make a difference. So the Effective Managers Survey is now available to organizations. It's a 94-question confidential survey, so we assure managers that they will not have their specific results provided onwards. So therefore, each manager can give confidential feedback through us to the organization. We gather the data directly from managers on a secure website. I mentioned already it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to complete the survey. The other thing that's important is that data is saved on the fly, so that multi-session response is built in, and if something happens, the manager is called away, the computer crashes, whatever, there is an opportunity to come back and not have to re-enter data. There is a survey report that's developed for each organization. It's got comparisons to benchmark and recommendations for action. And with respect to benchmark, I'd like to put a bit of a caution out to you, and that is that while benchmark is interesting, a survey or an assessment of an organization does feed back a valid picture of the current state of that organization. So I think that has value in and of itself. So depending on the strategy of the organization, depending on the change program that might be in front of you, that information is important in and of itself. So in some cases, you might be much higher than benchmark in one dimension, but it's so critically important to a change program that's underway that you would want to invest in that even though you're higher than benchmark. So we do include benchmark, but I always put the proviso out there that it's a nice to have and it's good to know, but not to drive your initiatives based on that. The report's distributed in PDF format and is freely available for use within the organization. We do provide major findings, and recommendations are summarized in a PowerPoint, which is also available and can be used in the organization. And then something we've built in, which isn't typically built into employee engagement surveys, is a 3-hour meeting with the CEO and the CEO's management team. So that's supported by myself personally on a web-based format, so that we can help ensure that the concepts and the findings are completely understood by the management team of the organization. So in summary then, the survey will assist in targeting manager effectiveness improvement programs. It can gauge the current state of manager effectiveness. It can provide a basis for major change initiatives, and it can support strategy execution. So that brings us to the end. I said I would do it under 30 minutes. I was questioning myself a little bit at the beginning whether I could manage that, and we have. So we have a couple of minutes for questions if anybody does have anything they would like to put in. While you're thinking about that, though, in closing, I do want to refer you to the website. We have a lot of information there. There's information on the survey, but we also provide an abundance of free information to managers, to heads of HR, to human resources professionals, and to CEOs to help them improve the effectiveness of organizations. So we provide this information to help improve the state of our unsung heroes who are managers in organizations. So anything that is on the web can be freely used to help you improve your situation. Please do take advantage of that. And if you want to explore any specific programs in which I could be helpful, please do feel free to be in contact with me. And for daily management tips, feel free to follow me on Twitter. My Twitter name is there, so that you can be in contact in that way as well. I have one question, and we have about a minute left. The question was about the number of organizations and types of organizations in the survey. So we conducted the survey in 2013. We had 8 organizations that participated. We specifically chose a variety of sizes of organizations in terms of small to medium size. We didn't go after any particularly large organizations simply because of the logistics of doing that. We had all sectors represented, public, not-for-profit, and private sector. And we had 170 managers representing 2,000 manager-direct report relationships. So it is a comprehensive benchmark. It's much higher than many management and management sciences research studies that are in fact done in labs or university environments. So we're quite proud of the benchmark and looking forward to building it now as it is available to organizations. As other organizations participate, we will continue to build that benchmark. So, so that does bring us to the end of the 30 minutes. I do appreciate your attention very much, and thank you for registering and participating. This broadcast has been recorded, telephone ringing and all, and will be available on our tools and download page on our website within a few days. I'll send an email around when that is available. And if you do have any questions and follow-up, please do drop me an email. I would, as you can tell, I love to talk about this stuff and would love to follow up with you. So, so thank you very much. This brings the webinar to an end, and I look forward to being in touch with you personally in the coming days. Take care, all.
Hi, I'm Dwight Mahalitz, President of Effective Managers. Thank you so much for downloading the webinar. I hope that you enjoyed it and will find it useful. Feel free to check out other parts of the website for interesting downloads. Most are free, some are at a nominal charge, but I'm sure you'll find lots of interesting tools there and things that can help you be more effective. And in fact, that's what my job is. My job is to help you, help your organization be higher performing. The bottom line is that I want to start where you are, understand your problem, and provide services that can help you solve that problem and implement a solution as quickly and as effectively and as efficiently as possible. Give me a call, drop me an email. I'd love to hear from you, talk about your situation, and see if there's anything that we can do together. Thank you.